the best thing you can do is do things that interest you. I find that like people try to do things that they think are valuable, but like they generally don't even care about, right? And sure, that can get you a job, maybe, right? But and this is something that I wasn't able to do. Like I don't think like I don't blame people, but it's like looking at the big picture.
You're now listening to Season 2 of Spark After Hours, where we sit down to chat with STEM professionals every Saturday. If you like the episode, consider following us on Spotify and Instagram at Spark Hacks. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to Spark After Hours, everyone. My name's Anand.
And my name is Utej, and we'll be your host for today. For those who haven't been following us for a while, Spark is a youth-led, nonprofit organization founded in 2018 to engage students in the world of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Over the pandemic, we've hosted a 36-hour online hackathon called Spark from Home and a virtual case competition this summer called Chase the Case.
Here with us today, we have Adithya Venkatarao, a former CS student at the University of Waterloo. He's currently working as an associate software engineer at Veeva Systems, a leading provider of cloud systems for the healthcare industry. Welcome, Adithya.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Adithya. I was born in India in like 1997. I've lived in Thailand and Belgium, and then I moved to Canada when I was about 6 years old. So like ever since like my first grade, I've been here, and yeah, ever since I've had an interest in STEM. Even though I went to computer science. I wouldn't say that like I knew I wanted to do this directly, but somehow like I got into Waterloo, and here I am. So yeah,
that's amazing. So where are you working at now? What's your role here?
Sure. So I work at a company called Viva Systems, right? They're actually not that well known, although they're pretty big. They have a huge market cap. They have a lot of business. But essentially, what they do is it's actually pretty relevant to like the situation today. But essentially, when you want to get a drug product to market, right? There's a lot of steps to go through. Typically, it takes like 10 plus years. You guys have probably heard that like Pfizer, Moderna, one of the two makers of the COVID vaccine, they've gotten it out in like almost a year and a half, right? But essentially, there's this huge process that needs to be taking place. You have to do trials. You have to submit tons of paperwork, right, to the different regulatory agencies, say in the US and Canada, in the EU, etc. And the way that like companies have traditionally done this was like manually, right? They had Excel sheets, and they were tracking all of this stuff manually. And the thing is that although the actual process of creating a drug is pretty complicated, and the actual process of submitting the drug for application can also be complicated, it can be streamlined because it's like pretty consistent. The regulations don't change often. So that's where like Viva came in, and they saw that like, hey, we can actually create the software that let like drug companies input their information data, set up certain workflows, and really focus on just creating the drug itself, not worry about the actual process, which the companies had to do, right? Because the process also was pretty complicated. So they created the software, and now like we have like most of like the leading like drug manufacturers using our product, such as like Pfizer. We have like Johnson & Johnson. So that's a little bit about like what Viva does as a whole.
Wow, that's amazing. So they're for sure like really helping change and sort of ease the process of or like putting drugs out in the market. So yeah. How's your day-to-day life though? So we understand the Viva system, and they're a big company, but how do you work that little worker bee in the process?
Sure. Are you asking about my day-to-day while working, or just like
sure.
the day-to-day overall?
Whatever you'd like to say. So give us a little bit of both.
Yeah, sure. So software development, right? So I'm a software engineer there. Software development isn't all about writing code, right? So if I can like summarize what I do at Viva, I would say that maybe it's like 50% of like organizations, planning, design, maybe another like 20% of like our organization talking to people, making sure that the product is correct, making sure that we're building things in the right way, and then maybe like 30 to 40% of that remaining time is actually programming, right? So like typically the workflow is so Viva System is a platform similar to like Salesforce. So we build applications on top of the platform, right? And I'm on an application team. So typically a customer or one of our product managers will come to us and say, hey, we think that there's something that we can build of value. We've done our research, we've asked our stakeholders, and we want to build this, right? And that's where like the product manager usually takes that and then creates an initial like design document outlining his like just overall ideas, plans, and then that's like the first level of scrutinizations, and that's where like the developers actually step in, right? We take a look at the design doc, make sure everything makes sense. There's a review process, of course, and then this is where like developers get to step in, ask questions, and when they're comfortable doing that, then they move ahead with the implementation process, right? So then we typically write another documentation where we talk about exactly like what code changes we want to make. That gets scrutinized as well. It's a pretty long process, but then eventually, once all of that is done, we try to allocate work. We try to split up the tasks in a way that we think makes sense, and then we work on it, right? So that's typically what my day-to-day is like.
Oh, that's amazing. That's quite a like. There's a common misconception. People like, yeah, coding 24/7 around the clock, just code. But there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes in order for that code to even occur.
Yeah,
so that's amazing.
I would say that like you're not a coding monkey, right? Like you're not there just to like push as many commits as you can. Like you actually have a lot of power, and you have a lot of like influence over like the decision making of like how the product is made, whether it makes sense, right? Like there have been tons of times where like the PM would say like, hey, we want this to work, and the developers would say, hey, like we know like these products exist, and maybe like it doesn't fit really well, or maybe we can like alter in a certain way, and it's been changed, right? So it's definitely a lot more than just programming.
That's amazing. So let's go a little bit into depth about some of your like past experiences. Tej.
Yeah, so I wanted to just backtrack a little bit here.
Sure.
It's great hearing about where you are now, but you went to a very prestigious program. You did computer science at University of Waterloo with co-op.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, coming out of high school, you went to Turner Fenton. What knowledge do you have, like in terms of technical skills and even skills relevant to what you wanted to do? What did you have when you were coming out of high school?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. So I'll be honest, like when I wanted to, when I chose University of Waterloo for computer science, it was more of a decision against other things. I knew I didn't want to do like business, etc., but I didn't actually know whether I wanted to do computer science. Right, my programming experience was pretty limited. In Turner Fenton, I did the IB program, so obviously, like I had the knowledge and at least the drive to be like working around other competitive students. But as for what I wanted to do, I knew I liked video games, right? And I think like one of the biggest inspirations to like get me into computer science was like playing video games like Assassin's Creed and like looking at these like beautiful worlds and like really thinking about like how does this even come through, right? It's so complicated, but like it's all packaged into this like one CD disc back then. Now you can just like download games, right? So like that really got me interested, like solving those problems. So that's how I chose computer science. Also, although like I would say like I was not like all like really sure whether that's really what I wanted to do, but now I am. So I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. So from what I understand, you even said this. You didn't have too many technical skills, like actually coming out of high school, but you were still interested in the program, and you were inspired by video games you mentioned. But how did you want to learn more when you were going to the program at Waterloo? Did you maybe want to gain like practical experience through internships or another form?
Yeah. So before, so like I guess that summer of like when I knew I was going to Waterloo, to be honest, I didn't actually do much, right? Like I spent that I spent that summer off. I did a bit of like preparation work, I guess. Like my programming experience at the time was pretty limited, right? I did a couple of courses, but I thought that going into first, figure out like what I wanted to do, because that's definitely not something that I knew. So I wanted to go into first year, maybe figure something out then, and then like just go on from there. So that's honestly what I did in that summer, which is like not much in terms of like actual like practical, technical, like applicable skills at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and then going into first year, what was your process, or what was your success with landing internships, being like a new student in the program?
Yeah. So first year was pretty rough, right? So in grade 12, like all other students, or at least most other students who got into Waterloo, like I had like really good grades. But like first year really hits you hard, right? I think my like average dropped like 20%, and it's not due to a lack of like hard work. I'd say that like that's something that's really not changed about me. Like I want to do the best that I can, but it was tough. Also like not only doing school, but also like managing my personal life, right? And that's something that people forget. Like you're living by yourself, you have to cook for yourself, you have to remember to do laundry, and you have to like figure out your time management. You don't have your parents like helping you out. So well, with all of that happening, my marks were okay, definitely not great. I would say like below average. And that first internship, which happened like 2 semesters after I started, like I would say like I was pretty disappointed, right? I didn't actually get a software engineering internship or like a software tester internship, but rather like I worked for the University of Waterloo as part of their incubator program. So they have an incubator program where like potential startups can go to them, get some funding, and then they would have a pool of like students or resources. So like I was in that pool where like they would allocate out resources to help the startups like get up to speed, right? So I helped like 4 or 5 different startups with their initial like design phase and their planning phase, and helped them out with almost like anything that they wanted, right? So that involved a bit of like web development work, but that's also like a lot of just but it also included just very generic like administrative or like design process. So it was a cool experience, but like not like I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like I was definitely not thrilled, right? Especially when like comparing like how like my friends were doing, or like where at least I wanted to be. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I can understand like you're disappointed because you essentially landed this role that you didn't want to be there. And you saw your peers getting somewhere that you weren't yet at. Do you want to elaborate on how you felt at the time? Like how maybe your mindset, you know?
I felt pretty down. Like I'll be honest, like it was a pretty low moment. I was of course unhappy about my marks, and at that time, like thinking back, like maybe I shouldn't have been that focused. But like honestly, I thought like that's all I had, right? Like I thought these marks was a definition of my current success, and they weren't great, and I didn't really get a good interview. So like, where am I going forward from here? Like I don't think I really learned what I wanted to do at that point. Like I learned the technical skills, but like I couldn't say like I really had a passion. And I felt like pretty dejected overall, right? I try to keep my spirits up, but like it was definitely a low point.
Well, yeah, for sure. It's understandable. Obviously, like you have higher aspirations, but like, like what next? What do you do after taking this quote unquote L? Like, how do you move on from there?
I took the L, huh? So that summer, right? So the summer was working in that job. I would actually attribute that like what I did that summer to like propelling my career fast. Like 4 things I did, right? The first thing I realized was like I was actually pretty passive, right? I didn't really go ahead. I didn't take the initiative to like learn anything, and I was hoping that I would gain that inspiration through my first year, right? Like, I'm like, hey, like something was interesting, let me pursue that. But that didn't hit me, right? And I couldn't keep waiting. So I wanted to get something done, right? And what I did was like I looked around. I saw that web development was one of the easier things to get into, especially if you want to get something visible on a screen. And its learning curve is pretty low, right? So that's what I did, right? Like I picked up some web technologies. Remember, at this point, I knew nothing, right? So I learned my HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Learned, I think React was my first framework, and I created a couple of simple projects. Like if you look at my GitHub, you'll probably see like there's like a hangman that I created, right? It's pretty simple. It has some simple animations, but you can play hangman. Like when you try to guess the words, and if you don't guess them within a certain number of tries, you lose the game, right? So I created a couple of really basic personal projects, right? Something that I could show off because my resume was pretty lacking at the time. And that's when I learned about hackathons. So at that point, like I didn't really know what a hackathon was. I'd never applied to one. But then I thought that like I needed to really like push myself and get out. So I applied. My first hackathon would be like next year. I would say that like at least this drive of like trying to do something, keeping myself busy, it really helped push me forward. And I think it helped me get that next job because like people asked about it. So I'm pretty happy. Like I'm pretty happy on like what I did afterwards.
Yeah. It's understandable. Yeah, you threw that ambition in, constantly pushed yourself, and you got successes at the end of the road.
Right.
Well, let's backtrack a bit. So if you're willing to, like what things did you learn from the incubator? And then how did that sort of reapply as you move on from some of the different internships or some of the different roles you sort of worked at?
Yeah. So although I didn't learn a lot of like programming skills per se, I did learn a bit, right? The biggest thing I learned was like how do you be an entrepreneur, right? And as an extension of that, how do you actually like take control of like your own interests, or take uncertainty and try to like spin that so that it works in your favor, right? So like in the incubator, I learned about a lot of like interesting startups. I learned about like the struggles and the ups and downs that the owners, like the CEOs of the incubators went through, the things that motivated them, right? And I think that really inspired me to actually get started and actually take control of my own destiny, right? Because I was just waiting and hoping that something would come to me, and I really needed to just go at something, right? Like I came into like computer science not really knowing what I wanted to do. I knew that for at least when I was learning web development, I didn't really know if I wanted to do that either, right? But I needed to pick something. I needed to set a goal and deliver on it. And if it didn't work, like, hey, that's life, right? So one of the biggest things I learned was like how do you organize your time? Like how do you think about things that you want to do, right? For business, you may come up with certain ideas that you want to incorporate. At least with me, like how do I try to figure out what I want to do, and then move forward from there, right? So I would say like those are the biggest things that I've learned, and I could really attribute that to like what I did in that summer and moving forward.
Well, yeah, for sure. So definitely like reapplying that, understanding what goes behind the scenes of a startup, even or like even the CEOs is a big task. Definitely, I definitely see where you're coming from, and like and sort of how like you wanted to change your own destiny in the sense of you didn't want to be where you are now, and you knew that things sort of don't just come your way, but you sort of worked towards that. I definitely understand where you're coming from. So going through this, so starting from that incubator, your perspectives change, your mindset sort of change. Like you're like, yo, I want to get where I want to go, and I'm gonna make sure I get where I want to go. So how did you sort of work your way up to the IBM internship which you had in your last year at university?
Yeah, so I would say that those projects that I did, right? And then the hackathons that I did, right? Like a lot of people go into hackathons hoping to like really learn something, and I would say that it's not always realistic, right? Like hackathon is 2 days. You can learn a lot, right? But at least what I found was useful was come up with something that you want to learn, right? Just something baseline, keep it realistic, and try to find a good group of people and create something interesting, right? Create something that like you're passionate about, something that you can talk about. I think like I created like this, like for one of the hackathons that I did, I created this app where we had like a hardware component where you'd attach this to cars and it can detect when you went over a pothole, right? From like the change in acceleration of like to the car itself. And then we connected that to like the Google Maps API. We plotted the potholes, and then we try to like update the Maps API to like avoid routes that had potholes, right? If we enabled a certain flag, right? And what I found was that like for that second internship, I would say like 90% of the interviewers, like when I got the interview, and I sat down with them, it was like the first thing they asked about. They're like, "Hey, this is so cool. Like what did you learn from it? Why did you want to create it?" And then they also talked about the projects that I did, right? Like the web projects that I did. So I would say that like if you actually have something to talk about, it's interesting. It's something that's outside of your comfort zone, right? Because like if it's too easy, you're not learning anything, and like it shows, right? Like you're not you haven't really taken like a step forward. You may be like where you are. So I would say like really taking these experiences and like doing these things helped me get that next job, which I believe was like this company called Kenna, where I worked as an application developer. But from there on, like I got my first like real application development role, and then it went up from there.
That's sweet. That's sweet. So
Yeah.
it really begs the question, what did you do differently this time around? So what did you go on? And I know you decided to do hackathons, you decided to put yourself out there, but
Sure.
what other things do you do differently in your approach this time? Maybe going into, say, the internship round, you wanted to create something for, say, Kenna, which
Yeah.
was something along the lines of like what the company does, or a personal project that outlines sort of like for example, take the Google Maps role. Like maybe you
Sure.
create a plot hole thing and you applied into some company which looks into, say, road development. So what different things do you do in your approach this time around compared to your previous years?
Yeah, it's hard to so I guess you can kind of tailor your projects for the companies that you are applying to, right? But it's hard to be like very targeted, because at the end of the day you still don't know much at that point, right? You're still applying to a lot of jobs, and you're happy if you can get something that matches with your interest, right? So knowing that, the best thing you can do is do things that interest you. Like I find that like people try to do things that they think are valuable, but like like they generally don't even care about, right? And sure, that can get you a job maybe, right? But and this is something that I wasn't able to do. Like I don't think like I don't blame people, but it's like looking at the big picture, right? Like yes, you can get a job by really like pandering to like the next like big thing, right? I remember there's a point where like everyone was doing this machine learning project, even though like I knew a couple of people who told me like they hated they hated like the process. They weren't passionate about it, but like they wanted to do it. So they would get the internship, sure they'd get some money, but then at the end of the day, they didn't really learn anything, because like they got the job, they weren't passionate about it. And if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to go ahead and do anything useful with it, right? You're not going to move forward with it. So at the end of the day, like figure out something you want to do, know what companies are looking for, and at the end of the day, if you can show that like you're a good communicator, you can thoughtfully like take a problem and solve it. It doesn't matter really like what type of project you do, right? As long as it's interesting, it shows passion, you can really get to where you are. Yeah,
That's sweet. That's really like cool. Again, at the end of the day, I remember even like big names such as like Elon Musk and all, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. I remember like they always go on that one thing of like passion. I mean, like if you're not interested in what you're doing, are you really doing it, or are you like forced to do it? Like you're running behind, say, like you say you're running behind like the big cash flow it may bring. But like if you're not really passionate about what you're doing, you won't really like evolve from there. You'd be the same person you're going into it, same person you're coming out of it, maybe with like extra money or maybe some like different things along those paths you may have gained, but you're not like truly growing as like a character. Like you're not like, all right, I want to learn this, but no, I want to learn this next and this, and you continually grow. And that sort of leads on to my next question about ambition. How do your ambitions develop over this period? So
I talked about like how you should try to do what you want to do, right? But I can't say that I actually did that myself, for especially in second and third year, because like I didn't really get something good in my first internship. So my goal was, hey, I'm actually going to do whatever it takes to get a good web development job, right? Like I realized this. So I did projects in the field, right? I did things that I thought would make sense, and I was interested in them. Like, don't get me wrong, but like one of the biggest things that I realized today is that I didn't actually take the time to like really think about whether this is the future for me, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because like what I found out was like after doing a bunch of just like web development jobs, specifically like front end and some full stack, was that like it was interesting, but I wasn't actually that passionate about it, right? Sure, like there were some interesting projects, but like through the experience, so I'm glad I did it. Like through the experience, I learned that like, hey, like I enjoyed like problem solving. I actually don't like working on like front end HTML. Like I'm not really that passionate about making things look pretty, right? So I think it was around like third year when I took a step back, right? And then I'm like what else is there in CS? And I think this is one of the things that like I see a lot of people fail to do, right? Like there's more to like software development than just like application development with like Java. I think like application development on Android and iOS and like web development, right? Like that's what people think, and then say like machine learning, right? There's so many applications of computer science that if you don't actually expose yourself to the different things that are out there, you're not gonna really know what you want to do, right? And that's the trap that I fell into. Like I was happy, but I didn't feel like fulfilled, right? So I think that like my experiences then kind of got me to like a point where like I felt a bit stable, like at least with my career, but then it opened up this new hole where I'm like, what do I want to do, right? Like, am I okay just like grinding lead code so that I can get the interview, and then doing like web development projects because I think they look cool, or is there something else that like really like calls to my passion, right? And like I learned that like it's actually not really like straight front end web development, but that's not something that I learned immediately, right? It just came over time.
Yeah, so it's like a personal reflection, right? Like you take a step back and you just think about like, okay, what have I done, and am I really going the right way? I think that's a great idea. And I've done it personally too. Like it just puts things into perspective and makes me see things for what they really are. Like a setback, is it really a setback, or is it an opportunity to learn from something and maybe not let it happen again? And I guess that's relatable to like what your past experiences were. So on that note, like with this reflection, do you see that these failures are actually learning experiences, and maybe they've helped you become the person that you are now?
Yeah. You know, like if you ask me, like if and like I'm like 100% honest. Like if you got like knowing what you know now, like if you got like say Google, like say that Google internship in first year, would you have actually taken it over this like no-name internship? The answer is no, right? And like I probably wouldn't have said this like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but I learned that like first of all, like I met a couple of like people in my first internship that like I'm really close with to this very day, and I don't think I would have met them like if I hadn't like gone to that incubator, right? So that's one thing, right? And the second thing is that like I think this like gut punch, like taking the L, right, early on was necessary, right? Because like, hey, it's not enough to like do well in grade 12 and get into Waterloo, right? Like that doesn't that that's not success at the end of the day, right? And I think I needed that reality lesson, because at the end of the day, like regardless of where you go, right? So I know people have ambitions to go into their best university, like the best universities. It actually really doesn't matter as much. Like if you're a CS, if you want to go into computer science, like I presume like a lot of people want to get into Waterloo, right? If you don't get into Waterloo, it's fine because like I have tons of friends who have not gone to Waterloo, right? But they're way more hardworking than a lot of people that I know who are in Waterloo. And guess what? They're like in the same places that like they want to be, and um, yeah, like it just shows that like where you end up really is just like a kind of like a byproduct of like your journey forward, but nothing substitutes hard work and dedication, right? And that's what I learned. Like the biggest thing was like if you want to do something and you really want to do it, you can get there, right? Given a bit of luck and given that you have like the baseline skills to do it.
That sounds like a solid foundation, like for a mindset. And like with that in mind, what do you see next in your future, from where you are right now?
Yeah. So like I'm at Viva, right? And so I'm doing application development there. So like I'm using Java mostly, but something that I learned like when like especially in my fourth year of university was that yes, like I enjoy solving problems, but like I also really like working like low level, right? Like I want to have more control over the software. I enjoy like tinkering with those like the problems that come up with like working in like say a programming language like C, right? When you have to like manage your own memory, or or you have to like create a really optimized system where you have all of the building blocks in your hand, right? And it's more complicated to get something running. But if you build it well, it runs better than if you were to build it on Java, right? So I think like at Viva, like I have a lot of these opportunities to explore what I want to do. And in particular, like I've gone into graphics development, which is not graphics design, right? It's working with the graphics APIs that are more low level, that interact directly with the drivers that interact with like the low level like GPU and CPU code. So I've been doing a lot of things there. So that's what I do in my spare time, right? So like during work, like I try to find opportunities that kind of align with my interests, which there are, right? If you look for them. And then my spare time, like I'm exploring this out here. So let's see like where that takes me. Yeah.
And yeah, like again, so there's a lot of people who have gone to say, like taking it again, backing it up. There are a lot of people who've gone in like the same boat you have, who say even into CS, or
Sure.
who've gone to a program related school, or who are in generally high school who want to aspire to one day like walk down and get into CS or get into some software relating role, something like that. So there's like a lot of people who feel that way you are feeling now. What do you want to tell those people who may be in the same position as you were a few years ago?
Yeah. So some practical things that are really important, right? Get someone to look at your resume. It's weird, but my resume in the beginning was like it was pretty bad, and I think I was in this like English class, and some random guy. He like I had my resume open. He just looked over at my computer and he's just like, hey man, like I don't think that it looks really good. Like there's a lot of garbage in that resume. There's a lot of fluff in there, and I was taken aback, right? And then like he helped me like fix up my resume, and I realized like once I fixed it up, I just got so many more opportunities, right? Like I got a lot more calls back. So like so if you're in your stage where like you're actually applying to university, spend a lot of time on that AI, right? Polish that up. right? And it's a lesson that can be brought forward, right? Your initial presentation when you're looking for opportunities matters a lot, right? So make sure that you have that running. And the second thing is like have some ambition and take some proactive steps, right? Like especially with the internet, like you can learn anything, and because of that, there's a lot of opportunities that are out there, right? Like similar to what you guys are doing, where you're running this podcast, and I'm pretty sure you guys do like other stuff, right? Like running a hackathon, like do something that interests you and show that like you're willing to like take that extra step to like get to where you want to be, right? Like doing stuff like this matters, and people will notice, right? And at the end of the day, if you're doing all of this stuff, you just have to let like life play its role, right? There's a bit of luck. There's always ups and downs, but you can set the factors that so that they favor you, and then you just have to hope that like things work your way, right? Like you can't control everything, right? And you have to accept that at the end of the day.
I just wanted to thank you, Adithya, so far. Everything we've heard has been absolutely amazing. Just before we ended off here, are there any other links or social media you want to share with our audience, like a LinkedIn account?
Yeah, sure. I have a LinkedIn and a GitHub, right? So I would say like those are the two things that I can share, right? If you're interested in like seeing the type of projects that I created when I like had almost no programming experience, right? You can take a look at that GitHub. I think it's like I have like two X's. It's like XXADI101XX, right? It was a name that I came up with when I was like, I think I was in like middle school, and it was like my PSN username. So I'm just like stuck with that. And I believe like my LinkedIn is also like Adithya Venkatarao, right? My full name, no spaces, and you can take a look there. If you want to maybe gain some inspiration to take a look, and you can see like what I've worked on. Maybe that helps you figure out what you want to do.
For sure. We'll share those with our audience, and for the GitHub, I guess we'll post it because they might not be able to remember that. And I guess reach out to Adithya if you have any questions about his experiences so far.
Absolutely.
And again, I want to thank you. Like what you talked about today was really helpful. It basically shows that the world isn't always butterflies and sunshine, or butterflies and rainbow, I think is the expression. Or sunshine and rainbows, sorry. Sunshine and rainbows is the expression. And sometimes like you really will take an L, but like you can always go back from it. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week on the next episode of Spark After Hours. Goodbye, everyone, and goodbye, Adithya.
Thanks for tuning into Spark After Hours. If you like this episode, consider following us on Spotify and Instagram at Spark Hacks. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.